In this video, we will show you how to replace your left front axle seal on this Cadillac Escalade. This will be located behind your front wheel. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we need to mention is you will have to get a four-wheel alignment once we've completed this service. Now that we've made that note, safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so we can remove the driver's side front wheel. To remove the driver's side front wheel, you're going to have to remove your center cover. Just go ahead and pop that right out of the way. I'm using a plastic trim tool for this. Continuing on, we'll be using a 22mm to remove all 6 of our lug nuts and then the wheel. Now we are going to have to remove the driver's side front axle to get to this area, so we're going to have to start disassembling some of the front end. Let's start with removing our axle nut. We'll use a 36mm for this. After that, use a hammer and punch, and we're going to separate the axle from the wheel bearing. It's only going to move a little bit. Remove your washer. Hammer and punch directly in the center here. Next, we're going to start dislodging our ABS wire from its upper mounting point, making its way across the upper control arm. For this, I'm just using a small prying device. I'll use a trim tool. Just pop that up and out of place. Now for the electrical connector, it does have one red locking tab. You want to carefully pull that away, and then we're going to press in on the rectangular locking tab, just right next to that, and separate this. Now for that red locking tab, I'm just using a small pocket screwdriver. If you were to make your way just inside this area, you can see a part of that locking tab. We want to start pressing that up and through. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a hold of that. Now I'm going to squeeze on that rectangular black tab. A quick inspection of both sides. If you see any corrosion, it needs to be dealt with. Let's continue dislodging this ABS wire across the top of the upper control arm. We've got our one plastic mounting point here. I'm continuing with my small screwdriver. Just want to try to get underneath the lock. Should be able to separate this. There we are. A thorough inspection of that ABS wire. Now for this, I typically like to have it out and out of the way. We do not want to cause any damage to this. Let's pause in the wheel well, and we'll make our way under the hood. Along the driver's side of the frame, just underneath the master cylinder, we're looking for the upper portion of our front strut assembly. In this area, let's start by following this tube all the way over towards its connection point right here. We're going to separate this from its mounting point, holding it to the wiring harness. Let's go ahead and pry that to separate it. You can use a small screwdriver. I'm just using a trim tool. There we are. Now we can take hold of that. Looking at this, we're looking for our electrical connector. On that electrical connector, it does have a small gray locking tab. Let's go ahead and dislodge that gray locking tab. I'm just using my pocket screwdriver for this. Make my way on the far side, press it straight on through. There we are. Now we should be able to squeeze on that and separate this. Obviously, a quick inspection of both sides for corrosion. That looks good. Continuing on, we're going to be looking for the hardware holding the front strut to the frame. One of them's out in the open, but the other two do have a wiring harness sitting over the top of them. Let's start by disconnecting those wiring harnesses from the top of the studs. Let's go ahead and take hold of the wiring harness here. We're going to lift this up and away from the stud, which is attached to that front strut assembly. Just a quick inspection of that plastic, make sure it's still reusable. We'll make our way over to the next mounting point right here. Once again, we're just lifting up on this. If you find you have a hard time lifting, you can try prying it up and out of position as well. Just be extremely careful not to cause any damage. There's that one. Continuing on, we'll be using a 15mm to remove all 3 of our mounting nuts up along the top here. There's one out in the open, which we already saw. The other 2 had the wiring harness running across the top of them. Start getting these off of here. For the first one, we're going to fully remove it, a quick inspection, and start it back on a couple threads. That looks good. Let's get the other 2. Get that last one. Now that we've completed this, let's make our way safely under the front of the vehicle. Under the front center of the vehicle, we're going to start removing our splash shield from underneath the engine. Now for this shield, you're going to find that it has several 15mm headed mounting bolts to remove. There's 2 along the front, 2 towards the center, and then 2 along the rear. Let's start removing all of these so we can remove this shield. Now we are not doing anything with our 10mm headed mounting bolts. Those can stay. Let's continue on towards the rear. For these, I'm making sure I'm holding onto the shield so it does not fall down and potentially hurt me. Carefully remove your shield. We'll set that aside. With the shield out of the way, we're looking along the driver's side. We can see where our control arm is, we can see the front differential, and we can see our axle. We're going to start separating the axle from the front differential flange here. You're going to find that you have several 15mm headed mounting bolts holding the axle in place. Let's start removing all of these. Each one of these bolts should look the same. You do not need to worry about mixing them up. I'm just going to start in one of the mounting bolts. That'll prevent this from coming loose and potentially hurting anybody as we continue on. Now let's move out towards where the outer tie rod end and the steering knuckle connect. We're going to remove our 21mm nut so we can separate the tie rod end from our knuckle. There we are. That nut off of there. To separate this, I'm going to use a hammer and tap along this area. You can also use a tie rod separator tool. Sometimes it comes apart easier than others. Now let's move along to removing our front sway bar link. To disconnect this, you're going to find you have a 15mm nut up along the top, several rubber bushings, and as you make your way towards the bottom, just underneath the lower control arm, you're going to find a circular port where we're also going to be using a 15mm. That on there. I'm going to hold that nut with my wrench. I should be able to start removing this. As you start removing your hardware, give it a quick inspection. If anything looks like it's damaged or weak in any way, it's a good idea to go ahead and replace it. This looks fine. It's common for this to be rusted in place. Moisture makes its way inside of this area. We'll just continue on removing this. Now, as we're pulling this apart, you do not need to fully remove this sway bar link. If it does not want to come apart, it realistically just needs to be able to move around like this, giving us ample room in this area. Now back at the axle here, we can remove our mounting bolts. This should be able to move around and separate. Now we'll start separating the lower portion of the strut from the lower control arm. For this, we're using a 15mm for each of these two bolts, but keep in mind, these are the last things holding this front strut in place. With both of those bolts out of there, we're holding onto the front strut and we're going to make our way just up above the front strut tower, which is attached to the frame of the vehicle. We're just going to remove that one 15mm mounting nut that we left in place up there. It's only on a couple threads. I'll just reach right up there, easily remove it. Now to separate the lower strut from the lower control arm here, we're going to have to apply downward pressure. This can be easiest if you have a long prying device. I'm going to go up along the frame and the upper control arm, and we should be able to pull down on this enough that we can separate this, pulling the strut out towards this area and bringing it down and out of position. Through here. Set that aside. For this, we're going to take hold of the inboard side. We'll start sliding this out and away from our front differential yoke, and then we can draw the entire front axle out towards the center of the vehicle, removing it from the wheel bearing. Quick inspection of that, we'll set it aside. Now we can start removing this from the front differential. This is actually attached inside of the front differential, deep inside here, with a small circular clamp making its way around the shaft which is attached to this. It's all one piece. We're going to start removing it, and it's going to make its way out towards the driver's side. We want to be extremely careful that this does not go flying out, potentially hurt anybody, or even get damaged. So for me, I'm just going to put a strap right through one of these ports here. I've got it nice and loose, obviously, because I'm going to start separating this, pulling it away from the differential. Now that we have our cord in place here with a little bit of pressure, we're going to continue on using a hammer, and I'm going to start tapping on this, trying to drive it out. It does have a locking ring inside of the differential here that's supposed to attach to the shaft of this. So let's just go ahead and start hitting on this. Okay. Sometimes it takes a couple more hits than that. Obviously, you don't want to hit upward. We're not trying to cause any damage here. Keep in mind, fluid might come out of this area. This off of here. Now we can start removing this. Like I said, fluid might come out. And then right in here's our seal. Let's start removing our two-piece seal. You have this piece right here. As we start prying it out, more than likely that'll come off first, and then as you move a little bit further outward, you have a second ring. That part will come out as well. For this, I'm just using a long pry bar. We'll carefully make our way in here at an angle, and we'll start prying this apart. That came apart a little differently, but let's continue on with the rest of it. There it is. Go ahead and set that aside for disposal. With that out of place, the next thing we need to do is clean and inspect the differential where the brand new seal is going to go. I'm just going to go ahead and use a clean rag for this. We're never using any detergents that might make its way into that differential. This can cause damage to your differential. We're making sure this is not damaged, cracked, or otherwise worn in a way that we cannot reuse it. This looks good. Now it's time for installation of our brand new seal. Let's make sure we have it in the proper orientation. We want to make sure we have the side with the black circle in the center. Moving outward, the next ring would actually have all these small divots making its way around. If you had it in backwards, obviously that does not look the same, so we don't want to be putting it in that direction. Before we get this into place, let's also talk about the backside here. We're going to use some petroleum jelly and just make our way right around this groove, all the way around. Continuing on, just around that center port right there, that's where the axle is going to make its way through. Continuing on, just around that center port right there. Now it's time for the installation. As we bring in our brand new seal, we're going to make sure we have this flat and level with the differential. And then when we go to drive it into place, we also want to make sure that we have a flat plate for that as well, so we can drive it in perfectly straight the whole way in. Now just a quick wipe here and we'll confirm we're properly seated. We want to be even with the housing. Now before installing this, let's make sure we have it nice and clean. I'm just going to use some parts cleaner and a clean rag. This area is the main point of concern. That's where your seal is going to be. Double check, make sure it's not grooved or damaged in any way. We'll also just make our way all the way up around the flange point as well. Let's get this in the vehicle. Let's get this in place. When installing this, we're attempting to press it towards the differential and twisting slightly, trying to align all the teeth that are in this area. You're going to find it only goes in so far. There we are. Now we can continue on tapping this into place. In this instance, I'm using a rubber mallet because I'm going up against the mating surface where our axle is going to go. Let's attempt to remove that from the differential. It should not slide out of place. If it slides out of place, that means that the locking ring inside of the differential is damaged or missing, and it needs to be serviced. This feels perfect. Let's continue on. Now, since typically you lose some front differential fluid during this removal process, we're going to top it off now while there's plenty of space in this area. To remove this, we're going to make our way all the way up to the fill plug here. We'll be using an 18mm. We can start removing this. Go ahead and put your collection receptacle under here. It's a fairly large fill plug. Go ahead and remove that. Just a quick inspection and we'll set that aside. Now let's continue on adding our manufacturer specified fluid. We're going to continue adding until we see a slow trickle of fluid making its way out of the fill port here. We have that slowed down to our trickle here. Go ahead and reinstall the fill plug. Once it's bottomed out, just go ahead and snug it up. You don't have to go very far. Right there's bottomed out. Let's go ahead and clean up our mess. Let's pay special attention in the area where our seal is located so we can confirm that there's no leak by the time we're done here. Now it's time to install the axle. We're coming through the lower control arm right along here, and we'll head in towards the wheel bearing attached to our steering knuckle on the far side there. We're going to have to align the splines with the wheel bearing and the axle, and we should be able to push this straight on through. Now let's leave this in this position and continue on to installing our front strut. Start getting this in position here. We're going to make our way straight up through here. As we bring this up into position, let's make sure we have our wiring harness going up along the top there. We'll start bringing this up. Now, while holding it in the upright position, let's continue on with one of our mounting nuts up along the top there. I'm just going to reach up through this port and I'll get one started on. Now we have the front strut in place up along the top. We're going to pause on the installation of the front strut and continue on with the axle. Let's get this aligned with the differential up here. We'll swing it up into position, align our mounting bolt ports, and start each of them in. Once you have that aligned, continue on with your mounting bolts. I'm using blue thread locker. Now that they're all started in, let's snug them up. When tightening these, we're going to start with the first one and then go for our second one 180 degrees on the opposite side of the axle. And now we can just snug them up. They're all snug. We're going to torque these to 58 foot-pounds. When doing so, you may find that this wants to spin on you. If that's the case, I'm going to use a 15 millimeter. We'll just go ahead and put that socket directly on one of the mounting bolts. Continuing on, I'm also going to be using a pry bar in between that socket and the axle itself, and now we can start applying that pressure. It's time to install the outer tie rod end. If you intend on using your original mounting nut here, we're going to make sure we use some blue thread locker. We'll snug this up, torque it to 26 foot-pounds. It's time to install the lower strut with the lower control arm. The bottom area of the strut has its mounting point, you can see right here. And the bottom area of that control arm also has two ears for that to fit onto. So we're going to have to press down on the suspension so we can bring this area of the front strut up and over the ears of the control arm. Just using a pry bar up against that upper control arm, we'll see if we can get this moved as necessary. It's time to install the lower strut with the lower control arm. The bottom area of the strut has its mounting point, you can see right here. And the bottom area of that control arm also has two ears for that to fit onto. So we're going to have to press down on the suspension so we can bring this area of the front strut up and over the ears of the control arm. Just using a pry bar up against that upper control arm, we'll see if we can get this moved as necessary. Let's install our 14 millimeter headed mounting bolts. I've applied blue thread locker. Start them on, snug them up. The torque for these is 37 foot-pounds. Now we can torque these to that 37 foot-pounds. Now it's time for the front sway bar link. We'll get this aligned with this mounting point on that sway bar. Let's go ahead and bring that up into the proper position, sliding it through the sway bar port there. You may have to tap on that with a hammer. Up along the top, it's time for our rubber bushing. And then we also have our nut with the washer. It's all one piece there. Now it's time to tighten this up. When doing this, we only want to snug it enough that each one of the parts is touching properly, but not necessarily squeezing down on any of the rubber components. I'm going to hold on to that top mounting nut with my 15 wrench. Down at the bottom, I've got another 15 millimeter. At this point, it's a good idea to go over to the other side of the vehicle and just have a quick look up along the top area here. We want to try to have approximately the same amount of threads on our sway bar link. It's time to reconnect the ABS wire. We'll press those two areas together. A light tug, lock it down with your red lock here. Just press that in until it can't go any further. Now we're going to start securing that into the bracket right down in here. Line it up, press it in. Let's follow that ABS wire down to its mounting point, right on along the top of that upper control arm. Lock it in, make sure that's secure. It's time for the axle nut. Before installing this, we've cleaned the threads of the axle, applied some blue thread locker. Let's get our washer on there. Install the mounting nut. When installing the mounting nut, you never want to use an impact tool here. You can damage the bearing or the axle. So you're going to have to do this by hand, but what you're typically going to find is when you start to tighten this, it's going to actually turn everything on you. So you want to prevent that. To do that, you can either have a second person inside of the vehicle holding on the brake, or you can use a pry bar diagonally down towards the ground holding it in place. Now we can torque this to 188 foot-pounds. Let's install our protective shield under this area. Get that up in position. We're going to start in each of our mounting bolts. Once all of them are started in, you can snug them up. All right, they're all started in. One last inspection underneath the vehicle and we can make our way back up under the hood. After installing that shield, it's time to reinstall the wheel. We'll get it up in position, start on all 6 of our 22 millimeter lug nuts, get the wheel back on the ground, and we'll be torquing each of the lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds. Now that we got the wheel on the ground, we'll be torquing these to that 140 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. torqued. If you have a center cover, go ahead and install that now. When installing the center cover, you want to have a quick look along the back side. You're looking for a small symbol that looks like a valve stem. Go ahead and align that with the valve stem on your wheel and drive this into place. Now back up in the engine compartment, we're looking along the top of the strut tower. We need to continue on with our upper mounting hardware. We've already started on one of our 15mm mounting nuts. Let's continue on to the other two. Once we have these started on and snugged up, we're going to make sure we have the full weight of the vehicle on the ground, and we'll torque each of these nuts to 37 foot-pounds. Let's get this one down here. One. Secure these wiring harnesses back into their positions. Let's get this next one. Okay. Now it's time to reattach our wiring harness here. Press it in, listen for a click from that, a light tug, lock it down. Let's get this secured as well. I'm just going to press this right into here. Okay, friend, we finished the installation of our seal, and we've topped off the front differential. The next thing you need to do is just go ahead and make sure you've cleaned all the mess, double-checked for leaks, take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.